Portuguese cod fishermen, lords of the sea. The Atlantic has always had a voice of its own. Sometimes it whispers gently with waves rolling like lullabies, and sometimes it roars in anger, a reminder of its vast and untamable power. For centuries, one nation listened to that voice more closely than most: Portugal. Among its sailors and traders, there was a brotherhood that endured storms, hunger, and silence: the cod fishermen, known as the Homens do Bacalhau, a tradition born from the sea. Cod, or bacalhau, is not native to Portuguese waters. The cold northern seas, especially the Grand Banks of Newfoundland and the icy stretches of Greenland, were the cod's true kingdom. Yet, in Lisbon, Porto, Aveiro, and countless fishing towns along Portugal's coast, salted cod became the heart of the nation's diet and culture. By the 16th century, the Portuguese had already earned fame as explorers and navigators. But behind the glory of empire and discovery lay the quiet, grueling labor of men who risked their lives to supply the country with its beloved fish. Every spring, fleets of tall ships left Lisbon and other ports, their destination thousands of miles away, in waters colder than the fishermen had ever known at home. They sailed past the Azores, across the Atlantic, until they reached the fishing grounds where the ocean floor teemed with cod. Life aboard the dory. The Portuguese fishermen worked under a system that tested their endurance. Each morning, when dawn painted the horizon pale silver, the men lowered small wooden boats called doris into the water. Alone in these fragile crafts, each fisherman rowed into the open sea with nothing but his lines, hooks, and courage. The dory was little more than a box of planks, unsteady, vulnerable, and frighteningly small against the vast Atlantic. From sunrise to dusk, the men fished in silence, battling cold winds and the relentless rocking of the waves. Some sang softly to themselves to fight off loneliness, while others muttered prayers to Our Lady of Fatima, asking for calm seas and safe return. The cod, however, were abundant. Fishermen pulled them up one by one, often until the little boat nearly overflowed with silvery, thrashing bodies. Then came the hardest part: rowing back to the mothership through fog and swells, guided only by instinct and the hope that they would not disappear forever into the mist, storms, and shadows. The North Atlantic was no gentle master. Storms rose without warning, turning calm waters into walls of black water. Many fishermen vanished in their doris, swallowed whole by waves. Others froze to death when the icy spray turned their hands stiff and useless. There were no radios, no engines, no guarantees, just raw seamanship. Every man who joined a cod voyage understood the risk. Wives and children left behind in fishing villages often lit candles in church, knowing well that the sea claimed as many husbands as it spared. Stories of loss spread from village to village. The dory that drifted away unseen, the man who never returned, the empty chair at the family table. Yet despite this, the fleets kept sailing year after year. Why? Because bacalhau was more than food. It was survival, salt, and faith. Back on the ships, work never ceased. The freshly caught cod had to be gutted, salted, and stored almost immediately. Entire crews spent long hours on deck, knives flashing, hands slick with scales and blood. Salt preserved the fish for the long journey home, ensuring that every Portuguese household, from wealthy merchants in Lisbon to farmers in the countryside, could taste the sea, even if they lived far from the coast. For Catholic Portugal, cod had an even deeper significance. Church traditions required believers to abstain from meat on Fridays and during Lent. Bacalhau became the perfect solution: affordable, long-lasting, and versatile. Soon it earned the nickname O Fiel Amigo, the faithful friend. Recipes multiplied, from bacalhau à brás with eggs and potatoes, to bacalhau com natas baked with cream, to the simplest boiled cod eaten on Christmas Eve. Each dish carried the weight of the fishermen's sacrifices. Brotherhood of the sea. Though each man rowed alone in his dory, the cod fishermen shared a powerful sense of brotherhood. On stormy nights, when the ship creaked under the weight of wind, they gathered below deck. Stories flowed as freely as wine. Old men recalled voyages where half a crew was lost. Young men bragged about the size of their catch. Some whispered of the strange fogs of Newfoundland, where voices seemed to drift from nowhere. Others told of whales that surfaced beside their tiny boats, their eyes as dark and ancient as the ocean itself. Superstitions thrived. A coin nailed to the mast promised luck. A gull landing on the deck foretold safe return. But the greatest faith of all was in the Virgin Mary, whose image often hung above the galley, watching over the fishermen as they slept in hammocks. Returned to Portugal. After months at sea, the return voyage carried with it both relief and exhaustion. The ships, heavy with salted cod, crept back into Lisbon's harbor. Sails tattered and hulls crusted with salt. Families crowded the docks, searching for familiar faces. Tears flowed, some of joy, others of mourning. The catch was unloaded. Barrels rolled onto carts, and the fish spread to markets across the country. To the ordinary Portuguese family, the arrival of bacalhau meant celebration, nourishment, and tradition. To the fishermen, it meant survival, for now, a legacy that endures. By the 20th century, new technologies changed the cod trade. Steamships and later motorized trawlers replaced the old wooden vessels. Radios allowed for communication. Yet, remarkably, Portugal's cod fleets continued to rely on the old ways, men and Doris, well into the mid-1900s. The government even romanticized their sacrifice, presenting them as symbols of Portuguese endurance and faith. Today, the cod voyages are memories, preserved in museums, photographs, and the songs of fado singers who mourn the sea's cruelty and beauty. But the tradition lives on every time a family sits down to a dish of bacalhau. Each bite carries the history of those who braved the North Atlantic, who faced death in fragile boats so that their people could eat. A fisherman's voice. To understand the true weight of this story, imagine the words of João, a fisherman from Aveiro in 1930. When you row out in the dory, you are smaller than the waves. Alone, you hear only the sea and your heartbeat. Sometimes you feel the eyes of God upon you. Other times, you wonder if He has turned away. But when the cod bite, when the boat fills, there is joy. You think of your wife, your children. You think of the table at home where they will eat because you fought the sea. And then you row back, praying the fog will lift, praying the ship is still there. Every voyage is a bargain with the ocean. Some of us pay with our lives. Others pay with our fear. But all of us pay. The story of the Portuguese cod fishermen is not one of grand battles or royal conquests, but of quiet heroism. It is a tale of endurance, of faith, and of an unbreakable bond between a people and the sea. They were not explorers seeking glory, nor merchants chasing fortune, but ordinary men who lived extraordinary lives. Through them, bacalhau became more than a fish. It became a symbol of Portugal itself, resilient, faithful, and eternal.